How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. I just got done reading what little books we had this week, but let's still go through them one by one. Stick around. All right, welcome back. So it is time for Nick at Night. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe and share the video. I would really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and put the grading bar up. I'm going to go through every book I read this week, and I'm going to put it on this grading bar to give you a sense of where that book stacks up amongst the rest that came out that week. So let's get into the big two. Again, not a whole lot of books. We're going to start with Amazing Fantasy number 1000. You guys remember all those issues leading up to 1000, right? So this is basically a series of short stories from many different folks. How many stories do we have? 3, 6, 7, about 8 different stories inside this book. So as you would expect, each story gets 3 or 4 pages, maybe, different artist, different writer, and they tackle a bunch of different topics that Spider-Man has gone through over his whole career. There's lots of J. Jonah Jameson. There's some Mary Jane stuff in here. We get to see some Vulture. We get a variety of different villains in here. There's even some different timelines, like a future state timeline. There's like an earlier on kind of timeline, more modern day. Some pretty shocking things. So there's a couple stories that actually stand out, I think, amongst the group here. And I think that basically the one that I enjoy the most was by Anthony Falcone. And so basically it was kind of this like future look at Peter Parker. He still has the same problems though. He's always late to everything. He's fighting the same villains. But he actually gets really injured, and the whole city kind of comes together and brightens his mood, kind of lifts his spirits in a way, and then he goes and does what Spider-Man does at the end. So it was an okay issue, just a series of short stories. A couple of these really stood out as decent things. But again, if you're not into that kind of format, like those 6, 7, 8 short stories in one issue kind of thing, probably pass it, but it's Amazing Fantasy 1000. So just pick it up maybe, you know? It's a not too bad of a book. Next Marvel book we read was Star Wars Obi-Wan. This is issue number 4. Got that Sprouse variant. Again, these Sprouse variants are pretty interesting. These Choose Your Destiny. I think there's around 21, if I'm not mistaken. If I've counted correctly, I probably have somewhere around 15 or 16 of them right now, maybe. And so we're almost wrapping up. I think I don't see any more of these on FOC anytime soon, or I haven't seen them lately, rather. So I think that kind of run will be ending soon. I wonder if they're going to pick it up for a later launch of these kinds of covers. I think that would be kind of cool, I think. So we got Christopher Cantwell on this Obi-Wan book. It starts the same way as every one of these issues has so far. Obi-Wan's on Tatooine. He's old man Obi-Wan. He's sitting around. There's this impending storm coming. It's a literal storm, probably a figurative storm as well. And so he's kind of reliving his days. This is around the Clone Wars when he's training Anakin still. And in this particular issue, they're kind of hunting down this general that they brought up in a previous issue. He kind of went mad. He has like a post-traumatic stress kind of thing going on. He's going on this like slaughter mission right now. And so our 2 Jedis are on the hunt for him to try to bring him in peacefully. And we see how that altercation goes towards the end. Art style wise, I'm not a giant fan of the art. It works, but like it's a little bit too clean and too bright and too vibrant for me. I kind of prefer comics that are a little bit more sketchy, a little bit more rough, a little darker, things like that. But I think the content, the actual story in this issue was pretty fun. There's no giant overarching story amongst these Obi-Wan books so far. They're all these little one-shot stories. And, that wasn't exactly what I was expecting. It's kind of working. I don't know how much longer I could take of this kind of thing. I want to see what happens. I want to see where the story's going overall. Or is this just a trip down memory lane? Is that all this is going to be? I'm not entirely sure. What are you guys thinking of Obi-Wan? Next Marvel book we have this week was The Variants. This is a Jessica Jones book. We have issue number 3, if I'm not mistaken, from Gail Simone and Phil Noto on the art. Interesting book so far. I don't really know a whole lot about Jessica Jones. I did watch the Netflix show with the Purple Man, and that's pretty appropriate because Purple Man is all over the place in this one, Kilgrave. And so basically what happened here was Jessica met one of Kilgrave's first victims, and he explained to her that he kind of planted an 10-year anniversary bomb, essentially, in her head. And so on the 10-year anniversary, something would happen. Jessica Jones is approaching that 10-year anniversary from when she was victimized. And so now all hell is kind of breaking loose. We have these different variants. We have like a Captain America version of her. We have like another version of her. We have all these different versions kind of converging as well, which is kind of interesting and weird. And I can't remember if they really explored why that's happening necessarily just yet. So we're trying to wrap our head around all the different things that the Purple Man could have done to her, what kind of figurative bomb is inside of her head that's about to go off. We know it has something about harming her family. Luke and kids are all off right now somewhere else, and she's got She-Hulk to kind of help protect herself from the people around her. And so it's kind of an interesting conversation between those two, and of course with the different variants that have shown up, the different Jessica Jones variants that have shown up. So overall, I think it's a pretty decent story. I would like a little bit more explanation about what the variants are, where they came from, pacing out what exactly Kilgrave did to Jessica Jones and what it all means. And I think it's been pretty interesting so far. I do like the art style. I'm a big Phil Noto fan. I do like that. And so, yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad of a book. It's just interesting enough to keep reading. So if there was books on the chopping block and I didn't buy books that didn't blow me away every week, this would probably be on the chopping block. But it features a character that I really don't know anything about, and I haven't read a lot of solo series or things with Jessica Jones in it. So that's pretty much the reason why I'm sticking around for this, just to kind of get more sense of the character and to understand what this story is going to tell and what the repercussions are for the future. So let me know what you guys are thinking of the variants if you're reading it. The last Marvel book we read this week was Axe Judgment Day. We have X-Men issue number 14. And of course, we got our Cyclops like bound, and he looks like he has a hood over his head. Yep, and his little visors shining right through there. Not a bad cover. Interesting cover. We all know that the cover bait and switches happen all the time. This is basically, again, the X-Men team and broader teams are taking on this big celestial threat right now. We have the Eternals that have some kind of a grudge against the X-Men because they're excessive deviants, because they solved death with the resurrection protocol. Now they're living on Mars. They're expanding. So, you know, some of the Eternals are kind of pissed off about that, and so they're kind of activating these Celestials to pass judgment on the X-Men and take care of them. There's this big problem right now that essentially Iceman can really help with. He has to shield the Earth from some kind of a solar flare that was created by one of the Eternals or Celestials. And so basically it's a whole story about how he's able to do that and how the other supplemental members of the team kind of combine their powers, and they can actually prevent this big threat. And it was actually done pretty well. There's a lot of like weird social commentary in here as well that I just don't care about. But that was in here. And then there was a really weird scene in the very, very end of this book with Cyclops and one of the Celestials that's passing judgment on everybody. And Cyclops essentially, for lack of a better term, he kind of threatens him. And then the Celestials are like, yeah, you're right. Never mind. You're a cool guy. And I was like, what the hell is that all about? I'm not entirely sure. But, you know, if I could say anything positive about this current event right now, it's that it does a decent job of introducing a whole lot of characters in this like mass coordinated effort to take on whatever threat's going on. You know, they're all telepathically linked. They all have different versions of like a teleportation power. And so it is kind of fun to see how they all interact and how they're all balancing all the different chaos that's going on around them. And then we have a lot of different people, a lot of different characters spread out across all these different titles. So, I mean, it is fun to see all those folks. I'll give you a little hint of what the art looks like in here. So we have Iceman doing Iceman things, doing some pretty cool stuff. Yeah, so I mean, you know, they're balancing all the action and all the characters, I think, pretty well. I think the overall premise I just don't care about necessarily anymore. It seems like we've had several issues now where they're in the middle of these waves and waves of fighting and battles and things like that, but we haven't really progressed the narrative a whole lot. We're just still in the middle, in the very early stages of reacting to the initial attack. And so I want to see the story go forward. I want to see, okay, what's the counterattack? What's the plan? Where are we going? Has the motive changed? What are the Eternals doing? What's going on? Like, we haven't really explored a whole lot of that in the last couple issues of X-Men and Immortal X-Men. Maybe in X-Men Red or Marauders or whatever else, they're exploring some of that, but I'm not reading those titles. So let me know if they're exploring more of the next steps in those issues and they're just focusing on the fighting in X-Men and Immortal X-Men. Let me know if you're reading those titles. So that was it with Marvel. Let's go over to DC Comics. We only have one DC comic, and that was Sandman Universe Nightmare Country. This is issue number 5 from James Tynion IV. And so again, this is one of my first introductions of the Sandman universe. I do have an omnibus I need to get through. I haven't watched the show yet, but I'm interested in at least the concepts that they offer inside those books. So this is a lot about the Smiling Man. This is a lot about the charisma Corinthian. We have the Dreaming as well. We have the Dream King showing up in this book. And we basically have this girl who's being sought after by these two individuals called Mr. Ecstasy and Mr. Agony. And so they're going after this one girl. This girl is actually interacting with the Corinthian. She sees the smiling man, this demon that shouldn't exist is what I'm understanding right now. She's kind of wrapped herself up with this eccentric guy who's kind of in the know and kind of a collector of the occult. And he's very strange. He's got weird connections. He's obsessed with everything that's going on in the situation right now. And a lot of her friends get wrapped up in the mix here. We see a lot of supernatural stuff. It is it's interesting. There's just like a lot of weird stuff going on, and it's a little bit too grounded. As odd as that sounds, it is a little bit too grounded. I was expecting like this big mystical thing, and I don't exactly know if it's really meeting my expectations here. I do like when we dip into the lore, like we went to this old library and things like that, and there was all these weird stories and these concepts that they introduced, and I was hoping we'd get a little bit more into that. When they introduce high concepts into here, like the Dreaming King, they did a decent job of bringing that character in, but like I didn't feel the impact. I didn't feel like, oh yeah, this is a bad dude and extremely powerful. He came across as like, yeah, I don't know how that happened, or yeah, that is odd, or yeah, explain to me your thoughts and things like that. I'm like, I think a king would be a little bit more powerful than that, but maybe that's just my perception. Art style is pretty interesting. It's nothing crazy. It's got this weird colorless aspect or this weird vagueness to it from time to time. It's got moments where certain panels are really nicely shaded and lined, and then some other panels are just kind of, it seems like it was a little bit rushed. And the color scheming kind of changes depending on which, I don't know, reality that you're in or something like that, or if it's a flashback or whatnot. So they do a good job of differentiating from that perspective. Like they're kind of in this weird limbo state right now. And so everything is completely white, and they can, whenever they see something that's happening right now in the real world, they actually color it in. So they kind of give you an idea of what's going on there. So, I mean, that is kind of fun when they do things like that. I don't know if I'm getting the best representation of the Sandman universe in here. They've introduced another high concept towards the end in this book as well. So I'd say this book it's not bad. I don't have anything to compare it to. I was expecting something a little bit more high concept than what we're getting. This one seems to be pretty grounded. I don't think I care about the characters that they've introduced so far from Earth. I like Mr. Agony, Mr. Ecstasy, the Corinthian, things like that. But like the people that they're involved with on Earth, aside from the eccentric, weird occult collector guy, they don't seem interesting, and I don't really care about them anymore. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys are thinking about Sandman, especially if you read the old stuff. Let me know what you thought. All right, we're out of the big two. We're going to go over into some indie books. We're going to start with Scout Comics. This is a book I did not have on my radar at all, and I saw it was from Kaplan, so I went ahead and picked it up. Interesting cover. We have Forever Forward. And again, I didn't know anything about this book. Again, interesting cover. And I flipped through it and it was like, wow, this actually seems pretty interesting. It's about time travel. It's about these friends who kind of get locked up into the future and they don't know where to go, and they have to kind of trust each other and keep pushing forward, forever forward, to kind of get back to their home. And so basically we get introduced to our characters in this first issue. We have a guy here who's really obsessed with his work. He doesn't really have time for his friends anymore. He's drifting further and further apart. They're doing everything they can to bring him back in, to like give him a life again in a way, because he's just way too obsessed with what he's doing right now. But what he's doing is time travel. Of course, they're all getting together with like an intervention type of a situation. All hell breaks loose. They get pushed out into the future and they have to figure out what to do from there. It's a pretty cool setup and scenario as well. And there's a little bit of mystery in here as far as what do they do next. And so it is kind of interesting to see the different characters. They all have unique voices. They all have their rationale and their reasons to want to have this intervention. They want to maintain this relationship. Of course, there's a wide variety of people that they've included in that conversation, which makes it interesting. And so I thought it was pretty well done. It was pretty straightforward, nothing too extraordinary, but I thought it was well handled. The art style is pretty fun as well. I'll show you a little hint of what that looks like, so you can get an idea of what that might be. It is really, they take advantage of the space, I would say. They're not afraid of putting a lot of detail and backgrounds, which I really like. I don't like it when we have our foreground characters half-assed done and the background's just blurred out. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, oh, come on. You actually have to put some effort into it. Fill that page out, man. You have all that room. Go ahead and fill it out with all kinds of artwork. So art style was good. Stories, it was pretty decent. Nothing extraordinary, but it wasn't boring for sure. Definitely a page turner. I'm looking forward to it going forward. I need to see where the other ones are, or if they're already hitting FOC. But let me know if you read Forever Forward and what your thoughts were about it down below. All right, we're going to dip into some Image comics next. We have Magic Order Volume 3, Issue number 2 from Mark Millar. And this is not a bad book at all. This whole series is it's pretty interesting. You have to really follow it and pay attention to characters and details. And this book is a really cool explainer issue in a way. It talks about Leonard Moonstone and how he met essentially his wife and the mother of all of his children. They have a very interesting origin story of how they actually met. Apparently in the magic world, once a year, they kind of go to this one place, have these giant orgies or whatever. It's really interesting. And all the good guys and bad guys are all hooking up. And Leonard actually hooks up with this woman here who has some kind of precognition powers. And so she's actually in the middle of like foreplay saying, hey, we're going to have 4 children. One of them's going to die. The other one's going to be killed by a sister or by its sibling. And the other one's going to grow up and do some other stuff. And he's just like, hey, this is really a turnoff. We just met, right? But they actually end up getting married. And a lot of the stuff we've read in volume 1 and 2 actually plays out that way in here, obviously. And they touch on some of the other milestone events that happened in their life, which she kind of foretold as well. So it was pretty cool to see how that all happened. Of course, in our last issue, they actually met up as their older selves right now because they have this big legacy threat that they're trying to keep at bay right now, and they're kind of losing their grip on that, and so they're kind of collaborating to see what they're going to do about that. And again, it's another big shock at the end, especially if you've been following volumes 1 and 2. You really need to get into this, understand what's going on. My only gripe about Magic Order is it's highly, highly dependent on the previous volumes, just to get your general understanding of what's going on. And so it is not new reader friendly at all. So do not jump into volume 3 thinking you'll pick it up and just go from there. Cool art style, really awesome splash page here, which shows off one of the key milestone moments in their relationship and one of the moments that she predicted in the past. Of course, there's a beeline story in here as well that I'm not really too interested in. We'll see how that's going to play out towards the end. So Magic Order, again, it's one of those like weird books that I just get because I've read so many of them and I like the premise, and every once in a while it's really, really great. Most of the time it's somewhat confusing because, again, it's really dependent on you remembering all these little details about all the relationships that they have inside this book from volumes 1 and 2. So, with that said, it's not a bad book at all. It's definitely like in the middle or towards like the end of the scale, I would say. But we'll see how I feel about the entire series overall when volume 3 wraps up. And it should just be a few more issues. I think there's 5 issues in each series, so we got a few more to go. We'll see where it does. All right, in the Boom Studios next, we're jumping indies like crazy here. We got House of Slaughter, issue number 8, another James Tynion book. And I didn't like the first arc because it followed characters I just didn't really care about too much, and it wasn't that interesting for me. This issue, it's kind of following this guy he's kind of indifferent about life and death and everything. He's trying to understand the different monsters that's going on. He has a really funny totem. It's like a paintbrush totem that follows him around and kind of helps him on his little missions here. They're trying to explore if there's a monster at this campground. It's like a Boy Scout camp. There wasn't a whole lot of evidence at first, but now there's evidence of like a dragon, and they're trying to understand what that means. It like lives in the lake, but that's impossible because dragons are gone. It might be a dragon-like kind of a thing. And I guess the funniest parts is like his kind of indifference about what's going on right now, and how he's kind of like, yeah, if I die, I die, whatever. And oh, isn't that odd? This shouldn't have acted this way, this dragon or whatever. And we got to figure out a way to conjure him up. And meanwhile, his totem's like freaking out the whole time, calling him crazy and stuff like that. And he's not listening. And I don't know. It's weird. It's definitely a big departure from Something's Killing the Children. And in fact, it's also a big departure from the first arc of House of Slaughter as well. It's got its own flavor, it's its own flair, its own speed, its own pace. It's not overly complicated like Tynion's writing can get from time to time. But there's really not a whole lot going on in this run so far that's really gripped me. And I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to read the next House of Slaughter book, like there is with Something's Killing the Children, or like there is for Nice House in the Lake, something like that. But I'll give you a hint of the art style. Pretty interesting. It's got like a weird Nightmare Before Christmas kind of aspect to it, like the eyes and the facial structures and stuff, like a Tim Burton-esque feel to it. But yeah, nothing super groundbreaking or specials going on of House of Slaughter. And we're 8 issues in. I didn't like the first arc. Not really enjoying the second arc so far. I don't know. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this one, because I'm a little bit conflicted. I don't know if I want to keep reading it. I feel like I need to, but let me know down below. And then the last book we read was from a publisher called Keenspot. Keenspot, Keenspot. It's called Kids Slapshot issue #1. And I just bought it because of the cover. I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to get that. I grew up in an area where hockey was really popular, so I grew up with that. And I thought, yeah, that'd be kind of fun. And I started reading this book, and it's actually a pretty fun book. It's just a fun comic. It's basically kind of a ripoff of the Marvel Universe. We have an introduction to this universe's The Watcher, and he's called Looky Loo, which is pretty funny. I'll give you a little hint of what he looks like here. Essentially, he looks like a giant brain, and he is pretty funny here. He's watching Earth right now. We have Kid Slapshot, the only human left. He's all decked out in hockey gear. He's actually killing monsters. There's like werewolves and Frankensteins and zombies and Dracula and stuff like that. And he's going around killing everybody. But this Looky Loo Watcher character here is like, hey man, I'll send you somewhere else. I like monsters. They're pretty fun to watch. I'm bored. I want to see these monsters do some monster stuff. So quit killing them all. And so he sends, he actually upgrades Kid Slapshot here, and then Kid Slapshot goes on a crazy mission with some kind of, again, he's got this sidekick that kind of floats around. Again, it's something to bounce dialogue off, something to create some comedy with. I've went over this several times. It's a pretty common writing trope. We've seen it in Above Snakes. We see it in Berserker. We saw it in God Country. We're seeing it everywhere. We saw it in House of Slaughter. It's just our main character having some kind of a sidekick in a way to bounce things off of. But it's pretty fun in this book. The art style is really cool. A lot of mischief happens. There's a cool centerfold poster in here as well. So it's like, it was just like a fun book. And again, there's a Galactus type appearance in here. And so I think what's going to happen basically is our Kid Slapshot got upgraded. He actually went and destroyed some stuff he shouldn't. Our Watcher character turned into like a Galactus kind of character. And he's actually going to he's going to make a bunch of other super powered guys that are going to go after Kid Slapshot. And all hell's going to break loose. And I think it's going to be kind of fun. So I'm actually excited for it. We'll see where it goes. They're going to have some homage-ish kind of covers and things like that coming soon. There's like your Galactus type character with our Kid Slapshot, Silver Surfer-ish kind of thing. So it was a fun book. It was a fun book. I actually read this one and was like, thank you for being a cool, fun book this week and not something stupid. So yeah, I like this one a lot. Did you guys pick this one up? I'll definitely be adding the next ones on my poll list. Let me know what you thought below if you read it. So guys, that's everything I read this week. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, a light week. We're going to be picking it back up next week though with some more books. I appreciate you watching the video. Like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos. We'll see you guys in the comments.